constantly for, well, not surprisingly, the past 13 years, many sort of political commentators and people, like myself who look at or are interested in politics, especially in the UK, always look at what has been the biggest driver. Why are we in the problems we are today? Now, Brexit certainly has a large part to play in the problems that we are in at the moment, and we'll get to that in a moment. But the real big one, the one that everyone said was going to be the biggest problem you will have is, hey, Tories, this austerity program you've got going. Okay, you've sold it as, look, we need to cut back on spending. We're all in this together, but don't worry, it's only going to be short term. And then once we've balanced the books, everything will be all right and dandy. We'll reinvest, we'll do all this stuff, it'll be all cracking, Don't worry, guys, we're all in this together. We'll get through this as one. In reality, that's not what happened. And it becomes a point of almost hilarity, Schadenfreude, when you've got Tories complaining about the lack of public services. Well, who's responsible for that? It's Tory austerity, because they cut back on these departments, expecting them to do more, or at least the same that they used to do, with a lot less resources. And how can you expect people to do more with less, or the exact same amount of things that they used to do with just a lot less money? And this was what has been the driver for austerity. We've seen Tories complaining about the lack of infrastructure, the lack of opportunities for young people. Oh, isn't all this leveling up program going to be great? Well, yeah, but we just don't want to spend the money to do it, really, guys. And that's been the story of the Tories. Even Jacob Rees-Mogg complaining about all this immigration going on and all this backlog in the immigration department at the Home Office. That's because of Tory austerity, because they defunded the system. If you defund something, don't expect it to run like it used to. And not just that, councils, because councils ultimately, and we're talking local councils, bore the brunt of austerity. And I think it was Steve Houghton, the guy who runs Barnsley Council, said it best. What does austerity mean? It said things just disappear. And you would talk about how there always used to be this funding for programs, for youth clubs, for all kinds of things. But the second austerity comes in, all those things just disappear. And what happened during austerity? Well, councils had to rely on EU development funds to be able to have access, to be able to keep some of those things going. That money is now ended. Most of the EU funding runs out 2022, 2023. And it's already taking effect. We started off in 2022, in January, covering the fact that there were charities closing their doors because there just wasn't the funding for them to that. And yet they were doing critical things in communities. No support from the UK government, all came from the European Union. And now, we've just heard that councils are struggling to fill this massive black hole that they've now got in their budget. Because what are they being asked to do? The very same thing that happened with the Home Office. Well, we're going to reduce your budget, but we'd really like you to do the exact same amount of work, if not more, with just significantly less resources. And is anyone shocked that this got reported, that there was such black hole appearing in council budgets? No, because they've lost European funding, which they were able to help subsidize a lot of their funding. You've seen even Rishi Sunak come out and claim, well, we took all this funding away from, you know, those poor areas and gave it to the rich areas. And it's not just that. It's the entire country is going to suffer. And I got a comment recently. I got a comment which sums all this up, because Brexit is a massive driver in really damaging the economy, which we need to help run all these services, which everyone expects to do. Even Conservatives, when you look in polls, Conservatives, time and time again, when they are polled about public services, always say they should be properly and fully funded. And yet that's Conservative voters. But Conservative MPs don't really follow through on it when they get voted in. Instead, they're free market fundamentalists who want a low tax, low regulation nirvana. And especially this, because it covers just the loss of HMRC. And I don't know if there's been any proper research done into this, in like the tax receipts that HMRC has maybe seen a loss in this. I wouldn't be surprised if it's out there. But his comment summed it up best. And then the guy went, hey, Paula, just to let you know, I run 4 different units in around the globe. And we used to, prior to Brexit, we used to send about 300k to HMRC as a tax receipt. So HMRC would get that money and then that could all be put into public services. However, post-Brexit, all of his single market orders not done in the UK anymore. They're done in Germany. So about 200k, instead of going to the UK HMRC, now goes to its German equivalent. And instead, only 100k goes to HMRC. And it's not just that will have an effect on the economy. He didn't say it, but I highly suspect that if you're doing that and there is less revenue going to HMRC, well, do you really need all the staff at your UK site anymore? We've said what businesses would always do. They would move out. They would move operations to the EU because it just makes business sense. You know, your nationalism, your chest beating, you know, Britain is going to be the buccaneering nation. Well, it doesn't matter because it makes more business sense to take part of your operations, just move it into the EU. Or sometimes, if we've seen on this channel again and covered them, move your entire business into the EU. And I really have to question how many times this is happening throughout the UK. And I don't know if there's research out there to see how much like a loss in tax receipts there has been from businesses who have then started to pay less than maybe they used to. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's because of Brexit. And especially, as we said, for a business like that, well, if you're now doing less of what you were doing in the UK, do you really need all that workforce in the UK where you could just say, well, look, I'm going to have to move those jobs into the German office? Again, he didn't say that in his comment, but I highly suspect that's probably what he would have to do soon. I don't know. Maybe you'll comment down below on what he's had to do in relation to that. I wouldn't be surprised. But like I say, business decision. We always said there was no case, there was no good business case for Brexit. And when push came to shove, businesses would do what was best for their business. And that would not be remaining in the UK or maintaining the same level of staff if they've got warehouses or manufacturing bases in the EU, keeping your same level of staff. Ultimately, that is a massive loss in revenue to HMRC, which means that we cannot afford to pay things for the NHS, for public services, to help local councils. It all has a big knock-on effect, and it all goes back to austerity. Even Brexit goes back to austerity and the drive that people had because of the pressure that austerity put on a lot of these places that felt left behind, that ended up eventually voting for Brexit. So, as always, thank you very much for joining me. Of course, please remember to leave a like, share, and of course, comment down below. And of course, there are the Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the Pony Club down below as well. So, as always, until then, we'll see you all very soon.